Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. I'm Pinky Webb. Today on the program, lawmakers at the House of Representatives are recommending charges against Health Secretary Francisco Duque and PhilHealth officials over the massive fund anomalies. And a presidential body will submit its findings to the president on lawmakers linked to corruption in the Department of Public Works and Highways, or DPWH. Also, Cavite Governor John Vic Remulla slams the alleged red tagging of women and celebrities by a military official. Cavite Governor John Vic Remulla and Anakalusugan party list Representative Mike Defensor join us live. Two House panels have recommended the filing of criminal and administrative charges against Health Secretary Francisco Duque and other officials. This is over the alleged irregularities in PhilHealth. The House Committee on Public Accounts and Good Government and Public Accountability will send a copy of the report to the Justice Department for further study. Let's go straight to the source of the story. We have Anakalusugan party list Representative Mike Defensor. Congressman Defensor, thank you for your time and welcome to the source.
Thank you, Pinky. Sa lahat po ng mga kababayan natin, good morning to everyone.
So, Kong Mike, there are two committees who actually recommended the filing of charges against Secretary Duque and former PhilHealth Chief Ricardo Morales. Just can you tell us what would be the most serious evidence the committee saw against Secretary Duque?
Well, Pinky, analyzing the case, kasi marami to, no? Iba-iba. There's the all case rates, tapos nandito yung kaso ng IRM, nandyan din yung kaso ng, so many cases that involve particular issues like yung issue ni Dr. Menggita, issue ng Cardinal Santos. Ako, ang nakikita ko dito na talagang in particular, very clear yung naging violation is the reversal of the decision of the Court of Appeals. Kasi nangyari dito sa kanila, they had this case before against Perpetual Succor in Cebu. Talagang nag-file sila ng case, nagkaroon ng actual hearing, nag-appeal sa Court of Appeals, PhilHealth won. Then eventually, when the decision came out and it was given to the PhilHealth, nagkaroon naman ng appeal si Perpetual Succor sa PhilHealth. Tapos itong sinabing violation, ni-reverse nila. Nabanggit ko to na very clear violation of the board. It is because it was already a Court of Appeals decision and klarong-klaro yung naging documentation dito sa case na to. So I think that's one of the strong case that we have on the board, no, in particular on Secretary Duque. For the others, and I just want to be clear about this, no, ito naman ang pag-usapan namin sa committee. Yung board kasi is a policy-making body. So maraming dumaan sa kanila, or let's say case of graft and corruption that are not really involving graft and corruption. Hindi sila nagnakaw ng pera, wala silang involvement sa actual operations, sa actual payment, but it led to a situation where you have a platform of graft and corruption like the IRM or the Interim Reimbursement Mechanism. Approve nila ito, 27 billion, inapprove nila yung giving 14 billion to different hospitals. And because of this, there are we have a situation now na maraming mga lugar, mas marami pa yung COVID case na lumalabas doon sa private or sa hospitals instead of that coming from the Department of Health. So nagkaroon talaga ng problema. You have people reimbursing so much money for COVID and yet sinasabi ng DOH, for example, 150 cases ang kumukuha ng pera ng reimbursement and yet you have only 100 cases in the Department of Health. So that is one of the problems that we saw and now we are seeing in the IRM program of the PhilHealth.
Let's discuss these two issues that you just mentioned. The first was the case that PhilHealth filed and they won, and even with the Court of Appeals. Why would PhilHealth reverse its earlier, parang you charge someone, you win, why would you all of a sudden backtrack and allow a reconsideration by the respondent?
Actually, Pinky, that was one of the questions we asked them na bakit pa kayo nag-file? You go through the process of filing a case, spending money for the case, uh, tasking your lawyers to handle the case, and yet magre-reverse kayo. Uh, I do not know. I do not have the answer for that. But very clearly, when the decision came out, ang sinabi ng board is that, well, to be fair again to the board, it was because of the advice of their legal department, and I would understand the corporate secretary, the legal, the lawyer as Corsec, was the one who told them na hindi, pwede ho nating i-reverse because may consideration, may mga patients dyan, and we have that power based on the recognition that they have patients in perpetual succor. Pero sabi nga namin, hindi dapat ganun.
Mm.
It have been settled within the Court of Appeals where the decision came out, or the Supreme Court, which is the higher body um, relative to the Court of Appeals. Pero hindi pwedeng ang PhilHealth
Mhm.
lang ang gagawa nun. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Pink, we have the data here. We have about 40 to 50 cases of PhilHealth doing that, of reversing themselves, of not filing the
I
actual
see.
cases, that they have violations. And all these are recorded in the report that we submitted.
So, Congressman Mike, what do they stand to gain? What did they tell you? I mean, they must gain something from reversing its earlier charge on particular institutions. Ano ho yung kanilang nakakamit pag ni-reverse po nila yung kanilang sarili?
Well, basically, ang sinasabi nila is because of the patients, no? That was the justification. Pero kasi alam the case, just to be clear about the case was in perpetual succor that they have misdeclared patients, and that they for
Mm-mm.
example, may mga cases na the patient stayed for 1 2 days but they made it 3 4 5 days. So ito yung mga lumabas na case niya eh.
Opo.
I the actual income for that hospital is about 13 million a month. So you're talking about 90 million because of the suspension granted, or well, the decision of the Court of Appeals. In this particular case, the hospital will be losing 90 million pesos. So as to what is the particular gain for PhilHealth, wala ko nakikita. Pero ang sabi lang nila during the discussion of the board, it was for the patients in that hospital.
Para hindi siguro matigil yung serbisyo sa mga pasyente dun sa mga ospital.
Yes, that was the justification, of which our
Yeah.
reply was, dapat hindi na kayo nag-file in the first place. It should have been settled.
Yes.
Yeah, but when you found out
Okay.
that this,
So
yeah,
yes, Congressman, go ahead, sir.
yeah, basically that was it. Pareho tayo ng inisip Pinky dyan, and we felt na hindi dapat ganito kasi if ang nangyayari kasi dito sa PhilHealth, until now, no, they have about 4,500 cases. Some of them fraudulent, some of them non-fraudulent administrative cases. But if you look at the track record of PhilHealth, wala talagang nangyayari eh. Parati na lang nagkakaroon ng settlement of cases, nagkakaroon ng compromise.
Mm-mm.
And the agreement of the committee is that we should be strict about this. We should not send the wrong signal to the healthcare institutions that anyway, pwedeng ayusin lahat. Anyway, we can always fix the case even if there is a court decision. We have to protect the funds. We have to
Right.
make sure that the funds are handled well, and if there are violations, connivance between PhilHealth officials and healthcare institutions, we should be strict in implementing the penalties against them.
People must be charged. People must be taken to court. And that's what they did, only to reverse themselves eventually. But I have a follow-up question on this. Be that as it may, sir, no? That they were saying that ayaw nilang masira or itigil yung operasyon ng mga health institutions. Were they even penalized in a way that they were asked to pay a certain amount? Because what we're talking about is cases of upcasing, pinapahaba po yung stay sa ospital, and the like, sir. The stuff that we've heard in the various hearings of both houses of Congress.
Yes. Dito in particular, the perpetual succor, they were asked to pay. But it was not based on what they increased it, I think, from if I'm not mistaken, from 50,000 to 100,000. But that's not the point, Pinky. No, I think the penalty there is really stopping them from enrolling
Mm-mm.
for 3 months yung PhilHealth patients, and that was big money for that particular hospital. And tama ka, marami dito sa
I
mga
see.
cases natin sa mga hospitals. In fact, since the time of the cataract scandal, if you recall, in 2014, we had that,
Yes.
rin resolve ang kaso nito. In fact, no, the recent case of WellMed, it is also part of our report. Marami nga dito sa mga kasong
Mhm.
maraming tao na involved sa WellMed are still or were promoted in PhilHealth. And until now, even the administrative case have not yet been filed. Kasi dalawa yung process nito eh. You have the administrative case and you have the court cases. Mismo sa
And the
loob ng
criminal,
PhilHealth,
yeah.
the case against WellMed. So, it's an indication and it's a problem. Kailangan talaga maging stricto ang implementation sa mga penalties, maging stricto yung mga pag-implement ng mga rules and regulations within PhilHealth based on the law of PhilHealth, based on
Uh-huh.
uh, violations of of our revised penal code. Dapat klarong-klaro talaga ang implementation dito kasi pagka ito na yung signal natin sa healthcare institutions, matatanggal yung connivance. In this particular case, very clear and you've witnessed it na meron talagang nangyayari na ang PhilHealth approves the hospital in the case of IRM kahit na may mga violation, inapprove nilang bigyan ng
Mm-mm.
pondo. Sila yung nagre-release ng pondo. In the reimbursement, sila din yung nag-approve. And this is really a dysfunction and it nawawala yung control ng funds natin sa loob ng PhilHealth.
Before we leave that topic, sir, yung filing cases and reversing themselves, what exactly is the involvement of Secretary Duque in this issue? Because later on, I'd like to talk about the IRM.
In the case of perpetual succor, ang nangyari was inapprove ng board based on that recommendation. But I have to be clear again, yung legal kasi nagsabi sila during the investigation, sabi nila, we can do it and we have the power to do it, to reverse the decision of the Court of Appeals. If you recall, Pinky, ito yung kaso na napakulong, na contempt si Attorney Pucalan of PhilHealth because of the question of Congressman Barsaga na sinabi niya, so are you saying that PhilHealth can deny or can reverse the decision of the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court? Ang reply niya, oo daw.
Mm.
And ito talaga yung medyo nakagalit kay Congressman Barsaga and the whole committee, which resulted to us declaring him in contempt. May isang case kami, for example, yung Cardinal Santos, ang nangyari was, na-establish na ang utang 240 million. Alam ng PhilHealth ang utang 240 million. In the corporate papers of HMI, which was the management company of Cardinal Santos, established din sa kanila na may utang sila na 240 million. Ang ginawa, in a very organized manner, coordinated manner, nagkaroon sila ng arbitration process. And then lumabas na lang ang utang 70
Yeah.
million. Again, the board approved that. Now, this was not Secretary Duque. This was another secretary who did that. And because of that, we lost 170 million of our funds. So ang case namin dito was indicated estafa and in fact studying the potential filing of a plunder case. And again, this is a question of policy. We're saying here in this particular case, no, klarong-klaro yung executive committee, the executive officers moving towards that end of really bringing down the payment of Cardinal Santos Hospital. But
Yeah.
the board approved that arrangement. And so we're saying they have to be responsible.
I see.
As to what it will be different, executive committee, but they have to be responsible as members of the board.
Yeah. We'll be taking a very short break. Let's talk about the issue of IRM and others when we come back. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Pinky Webb. Our guest today, Anakalusugan Party List, Representative Mike Defensor. Congressman, let's talk about the IRM. So, when Secretary Duque faced the House and he had explained his involvement or even non-involvement in the IRM, ang sinabi po niya na nung pinag-aralan po ito ay hindi naman daw siya nakasama sa pag-aaral na ito because he was so busy as chairman of the Interagency Task Force. And he even said na napakahirap po nung kanyang trabaho noon dahil maliban sa pamamalakad sa Department of Health, meron pang PhilHealth at meron pang IATF. And then he also said that there is no, wala naman siyang pinirmahan dito because the PhilHealth chairman has no vote in board decisions under the Universal Health Care Law. So what is Secretary Duque's involvement in the IRM that the two House committees saw?
Yes, well, first and foremost, tama yun, no? In fact, even during the informal discussion of the committee, nag-usap kami ni Secretary Duque, nabanggit nga niya, sinasabi niya na, Congressman Mike, hindi ako nag-sign dyan, I was not part of it. So, ang sinasabi ko naman sa kanya, it is the board, no? And you are the head of the board, and we hope to, when this case is there and the report is out, nasagutin niya talaga ano yung naging involvement niya dito. But we have to clarify na, Pinky, na itong IRM kasi, at that time, when we were discussing it, was still just a policy. So it was more of a policy decision of the board upon recommendation ng executive committee. Binigay sa kanila, ito yung gawin natin. So yung board naman, inapprove nila to. And while we were investigating, we were already trying to tell them, tigil muna natin yan. Wag na muna natin gawin yan. Ang inapprove nila was 27 billion. At the time na pinag-uusapan namin to, nag-release na sila ng 14 billion. Ang sinasabi namin sa kanila, kahit saan namin tingnan at kahit anong statistika ang pagbabatayan natin sa ibang bansa, yung nangyari dito sa Pilipinas, ang tingin namin hindi lalagpas ng 5 billion pesos ang magiging gastos natin dito sa COVID-19. Ngayon, ang nakakatakot dito sa IRM, which they did not change even when we were discussing the problem, alam mo ba, pati yung suspected and probable, isinama nila doon sa IRM. Ang sabi namin, bakit ganun? So you're telling me now that we will spend 144,000 pesos para lang sa isang pasyente na suspected. Inubo ko, masama pakiramdam ko, in-x-ray ako, pagkatapos na ospital ako ng isang araw, iyon ay magkukolekta na ng ospital ng 144,000 pesos. Meron akong ipinasok ko sa ospital, hindi naman pala COVID yung aking problema. Inilagay ng ospital na suspected COVID ako. Then the hospital can collect 734,000 pesos. At ang projection nila at that time when they were discussing this, ang gagastusin natin was 50 billion pesos. Nakaawa-awa naman talaga yung PhilHealth at malaking magiging problema dito kasi kapati nga yung non-COVID na lang, isasama nila. Okay na ako sa non-COVID Let's say nag-dialysis. Wala akong problema dyan. Pero yung gagamitin mo yung pondo para sa suspected at probable, magagamit na yung pondo ng PhilHealth. Hindi naman tama yun.
So ano po ang direct connection ni Secretary Duque dito sa IRM? I know that you're saying that this is a policy decision, it was approved by the board, pero ang sinasabi nga po niya, he was so busy. Ang dami po niyang ginagawa at wala naman daw siyang, hindi siya parte, bahagi ng pag-aaral nito at wala siyang sinign hinggil dito. Does this still make him liable? And if so, what charges are you thinking na dapat pong i-file against Secretary Duque sa IRM?
Yes, in the case of the PhilHealth and even our discussion sa committee, pinag-usapan na naman namin hiwalay talaga dapat ang board to the executive committee members. Hindi pareho yung kaso nila on graft and corruption. It could just be a simple case of negligence of the PhilHealth in the implementation of certain programs. So marami tayong cases, iba-ibang cases natin. In the case of the IRM, yun ang tingin ko. It would not be a graft and corrupt case. It would be at the maximum a problem of negligence with the committee. Pero having said that, again, the secretary is the head of the policy-making body. Of course, individually, they will be making their own defense. And, I'm all for that. At ako naman naniniwala doon sinabi ni Secretary Duque na hindi siya kasama doon sa pagpirma doon sa IRM policy. Yun lang, ang sana nga lang, when we were already discussing it, binago na nila kaagad. We were the ones who have to even insist na wag niyong ilabas tong pondo, wag niyong ilabas itong 14 billion, wag na kayong magdagdag pa dyan, at wag niyong ilagay yung probable and suspected cases. I think if not for the committee hearings conducted by the Senate and Congress, baka mamaya naubos na naman yung 50 billion pesos ng PhilHealth, nakawawa na naman yung institusyon. And of course, in the end, yung taong makikinabang dapat sa PhilHealth programs.
So ano po ang recommended charges to be filed against Secretary Duque based on the two House committees?
In this particular case, IRM, we will finalize it. We were discussing about the gross negligence. May kaso ng, of course, I've mentioned the case of perpetual succor earlier. May kaso rin dun sa yung kanilang ginawang amnesty program. If you recall, meron silang pinag-usapan no, na 60 billion pesos total amnesty. May kaso rin yun. So, it would be different, Pinky, for every particular case, iba-iba yung magiging kaso.
Yeah. It would range from what to what, sir? Yung kay Secretary Duque.
Well, of course, yung dun sa one of which would be the violation of the Vice Penal Code, which I think would be the maximum. The negligence case I've mentioned earlier to you. And well, I'm sorry about I cannot in particular say the cases because ang cases namin dito siguro that would involve the board would be about 5 to 6 cases. So, yung mga kaso kasi dito, graft and corrupt cases, violation of the graft and corrupt law, yung Code of Public Ethics of Public Officials, and then you have the violation of the Revised Penal Code. Of course, ito yung mga meron diyang plunder, meron diyang involvement dun sa syndicated estafa na nakafile dito. All of which ayusin yung submission nito sa Department of Justice and they will be the ones in particular to study ano yung maximum allowable case to be filed.
Okay.
Kunyari dun sa kaso ng Cardinal Santos, it was initially syndicated estafa but we already pushed that they also look at the plunder case to be filed on this. So ito yung range ng mga kaso within the report.
On Secretary Duque. So the range, just to be clear about this, sir, before we go to on a break. So the range of charges that the House is recommending is what? Plunder, graft, malversation, ganun ho ba?
There's no plunder case against the Secretary Duque. It would be from gross negligence to actual graft.
Okay, all right. We'll be taking another short break. We'll be right back. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Anakalusugan Party List Representative Mike Defensor. Congressman, so you have the Senate recommending file charges against Secretary Duque. You have the House recommending charges against Secretary Duque. But you have the DOJ task force not including or sparing Secretary Duque in its first round of investigation. And you have President Rodrigo Duterte standing by, giving his full trust and support to Secretary Duque. Is there a disconnect here, sir? Is there something the President knows that you and the Senate maybe don't know, or the other way around? And how do you see this moving forward?
Alam mo yung sinasabi ni Presidente, na sinasabi niya, di ba, Pinky, na you can charge him with so many things. Pero yung pagnanakaw, palagay ko, yung pagnanakaw, hindi yan. I would support the President on that. Kasi ang sinasabi naman even if you look at the cases na nakapila natin dito, even dun sa Senate report, wala naman sinabi nagnakaw siya. Wala naman sinabi na may pera siyang kinuha, including the members of the board. In fact, kapon nga dun sa discussion namin, sinasabi nila, tanggalin na natin yung board of directors dahil actual, no? And yung executive committee ang may involvement sa implementation ng mga policies nila. Pero sabi namin hindi, kasi importante rito, malaman ng lahat na magiging members of the board and the future members of the board na wag niyong basta-basta baliwalain yung pondo ng PhilHealth. Wag niyong basta-basta aprubahan yung mga polisiya na makakapito na mawawala tayo ng pondo. You know, you have to remember, Pinky, itong PhilHealth na to, kahit nakapikit yung mga opisyalis dito, it would have 200 billion pesos a year. Yearly yan ang pumapasok na pondo sa kanya. And ito na naman nga, may discussion kami sa budget, meron naman silang ginawang formula na yung konsulta nila, magkakaroon sila ng check-up, ang program na yun would cost them 68 billion pesos. Na sinasabi namin, ba't yung ginagawa to? Sinasabi nyo na nga, ubus na yung pondo natin, delikado yung pondo natin. Di ba dapat ayusin natin to, itabi natin? Now, another thing about this is the all case rates. Now, the board That was the discussion yesterday. Sabi nila, bakit natin isasama
Yeah.
yung board in the of the all case rates? Sabi namin, hindi. Ito nga yung basis eh. From 2013 to 2018, about 150 billion pesos na ang nawawala sa PhilHealth. And continuously, the board were informed. Palagay na natin the first year, hindi nila alam. Second year, nakita nila yung COA report eh. Third year, fourth year, fifth year, alam nila continuously there are billions of pesos lost to the connivance of the private healthcare institutions and and officials of PhilHealth na nawawala ang pondo natin. So, in fairness to you're asking me about the Secretary Duque, PhilHealth, and the
Opo.
statement of yung pagnanakaw, to be honest, wala namang ganun.
Okay. It's really negligence, sir, that basically you're saying. But that may end up sa graft nga po. Very quickly, sir, I have 30 seconds left. Because you have been really looking into this, sir, what should be done with PhilHealth? Are you looking at, is a reorganization enough? Abolish PhilHealth? Or have the private sector take over? What would be your recommendation on PhilHealth?
We made yung legislation namin, we made the PhilHealth Crisis Act. Ang binibigay namin sa presidente, enough powers to immediately hire yung actuarial services, legal, accounting, audit group for PhilHealth. Kasi natatakot nga kami na si Attorney Dante Gueran sa ngayon, siya lang mag-isa at yung team pa rin ng PhilHealth ang nandyan. Na gusto namin hindi, i-correct agad kung third party i-hire ninyo. As to the actual direction, if it will be semi-privatized or privatized, hindi pa natin alam. The second thing about the legislation that we W, na gusto namin tanggalin na sila sa mandatory at hindi dapat yung current policy on PhilHealth, on the law ng OFW ay dapat maialis na. So, PhilHealth, we hope that emergency powers for the President ay maayos kaagad sa lalong madaling panahon.
Anakalusugan Party List Representative Mike Defensor. Sir, as usual, maraming salamat po sa inyong oras.
Thank you, Pinky. Good morning to everyone.
Thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.